Welcome to Tattoo Shop Talk, which is sort of a weekly web show where we talk tattoo shop related stuff, tips, tricks, tutorials, and this type of longer type of conversations. And this time we will talk about old versus new, or like in this 2020, it's a common thing to say, okay boomer, what the old timers say to the new timers, and what's the difference in generations, and actually what's the generation gap is. So we'll talk that. Stick around, and if you have anything to say, you can always drop a line in the comment section, and you can always subscribe to the channel, press likes and all that good stuff. Back to the episode. Old versus new, old tattooist versus new tattooist. Who talks more crap? Who's more right?
Ooh la la! Everyone talks crap from time to time.
Except me.
The common thing about what I've heard is, this is not true, I don't like to use this. Or this is not true what you do, you should use this.
Back in the days.
Now, whatever. Oh, you don't do what I do, you probably suck then. So all this it's like everyone is fighting for their glory, you know, oh, I hope he's gonna follow my lead because I know better.
It seems like everyone's history is more important than the point of the history now. They're like, oh, you do this like this, this is wrong, because when I started things were different. If there's people who I started tattooing 10 years ago and things were different, it's like, yeah, that's the main point. Things were different, you know. Now people talk driving Teslas, and there's some people like, oh, diesel, and there's some people like, oh no, horse is the shit.
And yeah, you also have to understand that a lot of people just want to show that they know more than you do, and that's why they throw in all these ideas, unless it's on point, you know. I think it's always healthy to. I've heard from a lot of tattooers oh, you should try this and you should try that. In the moment when someone tells you oh, you don't do this, oh my god, you're stupid, you're a poser. Now this is weird. I've heard people say things about me using Instagram too much, and I think that's also weird. It's why would you say such thing that I what's so bad about using Instagram for my work, you know?
That's the main modern, somewhat free tool to advertise your work. And everybody does it.
Everybody does it. Even those who talk shit. They just do less maybe. Who said how much I can or cannot do? And what's the truth and what's not true? It's hard to understand. Why should I fit in your ideal, perfect tattoo world, you know?
Or whatever. In your evolution type of thing. It's 2020, it's all this coronavirus going on, and there were people on some forums asking is your supplies from China getting shortened? Because there's that virus and all those worries about it. And one of the first comments was oh, you all newbies better learn how to solder needles. I'm fucking 2000% sure that nobody will start to solder because China would stop sell needles or anything. First of all, there's plenty of them out there. Second of all, if you still solder needles, unless you're doing some super specific stuff, it's you shooting yourself in the foot. It's just
unless it's your hobby, you know.
Yeah,
or you wanna feel how they felt back in days. I mean, I wanna try, for real. I wanna try, but to just oh, it's so true to do that. Now I'm gonna cancel all these easy order things and just go on my basement and make needles.
Yeah, I also want to try a bow shooting. It's the same, it's a hobby type of a thing. Okay, I'll cancel 10 appointments in a day because I just solder my needles. It's good luck for you, boomer.
Yeah, but if the guy is doing it and he really enjoys it and respects the old tradition, it's fine with me. You can do whatever you want as long as you're enjoying it, you know.
Yeah, but it's respecting the old tradition over the efficiency.
Yeah, pushy people try to put you in the same bag as they are, and they don't think that you are enough true just because you don't fit in their fucking world.
Also, nobody makes them old-time stencils with the powder.
Yeah, why no one's talking about that?
Yeah, everyone's
Because
like,
it's maybe too hard.
everyone's like, oh, iPad, but like stencil machine is like, no, I have the thermofax. I have the old school thermofax. But no one's like, no, I'm still cutting shit into plastic.
It's like, I don't have a printer in my tattoo shop because I want to make it old school. You know, it's gonna make my work even harder. So I don't have a printer at my shop. So it's like, come on, man. Like, really? You have to do this? And whatever you do, all good. Like,
And we have a common old-timer tattooist we know who was claiming that he's like, I will never get to the iPad. Like, paper and pen is my shit. And for last half year, all you see is just this iPad. And he's like, this is fun. This is like, I can knock out designs. I can make...
so easy.
I can play on history of designs and this and that. And
It is so much easier to draw on an iPad when you learn it. It's crazy. But if you don't want to do it, no one said you have to.
Fine.
Yeah, like if you want to do it, fine. No one's gonna laugh about you. And these old ideas he's been teached in old days different, and that's why it's hard to switch. You know, I mean, for every people when you get older, it's hard to switch to new shit because you're like really like, oh yeah, my old stuff. You know, I went through so much hard things, and I respect that. You have to understand that it's gonna make your job easier with the tools that's in these days than it was like 20 years ago. I mean, I don't use iPad, but with my own personal reasons, and I'm not saying that iPad is shit. I really would love to be into it, but I just don't want it. Like, I have something about the computers that I don't have enjoyment drawing on them. But I'm not saying that I will never use it. That's the point. Like, I will, maybe one day I will use it.
Myself, I feel relatively young, but I feel so disconnected from modern time music that I feel like those older people who talk bad things about modern tattooing, because I'm like, I don't know who's Lil this and Lil that rapper and all that, but I'm like, yeah, I know that thing exists, so like, whatever, it's just not for me. So the same in a tattooing, but what I noticed lately is also those people who talk about old days, they're not even that old. Like, you know, it's
That's
not
crazy,
the old timers. Old timers, they have their shit
40
sorted.
years old.
Yeah, they do their tattoos and all that. And it's the dudes who like started tattooing 15 years ago, then they got somewhat decent 8 years ago, and then they saw a bunch of like Sailor Jerry movies and like
And this is how it works.
yeah, this is how it works. They have not had like any apprenticeship even themselves, and then they're the ones who's like loyal to the coil, fucking apprenticeship. You
Yeah.
have to spit on your fucking art, like
Yeah, on the skin.
On the
before you
skin
fucking
and-
shave it. No, but seriously, yeah, it's true.
those boomers are not actually that old tattooists. Them older ones, they have their shit sorted. It's the dudes who's just like
wanna be
five,
old.
5 years ahead of you, and they're like, oh yeah, I know what's up. I'm like, how was your apprenticeship? Well,
Also, this one, like, did you have the apprenticeship? I even heard this stupid story. One guy from, I can't remember, I think Brazil. One guy came to our shop. He was passing by, a piercing guy. That's a long time ago. And he came into the shop. He was looking around. It's like super nice shop. And then he saw me and saw my tattoos. And I didn't have like any shitty tattoos on my arms. So everything is pretty good made. And he looked at me. He's like, yeah. You know the tattooers talk around that if you don't have at least one shitty tattoo on your arm, you're really not good tattooer. Because you have to like go through that experience of bad and good and good. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is this idea? Like, where did you get this from? You know, like this mindset that you have to be experience certain things in the past to become good tattooer, you know? And we are coming from different areas and we have different experiences.
I agree with that at my age. And my age, I'm born in like 80s. And that's different, because like if you are like 18 now, you could be born in 2002. And in 2002, there's so much access to information that you don't have to have a shitty tattoos. You can get into tattooing. You can know the best artist on the planet. You can know the best people you want to be tattooed by. and you can start with the best tattoo you want at the time. Like you don't have to go to a guy around the corner who knows a guy who tattoos at home. You can just Google and find the best artwork in the best style, in the best like whatever situation, and get it. I think if you're like 18 now and you start with a shitty tattoo, it's a lifestyle choice. You're like, we did it at the party.
Some got it, some didn't. Like that doesn't mean anything. And why we even talk about all this is just you told me that you saw so much comments on Facebook or whatever. There somehow these amazing tattooers who have these lot of opinions about how things should work and how things shouldn't work. They comment non-stoply and judging other tattooers like, this is shit, look, the line is not perfect. Like they're focusing on other shit instead of focusing on their own shit, and it's like, it seems kind of weird. Like you find a lot of time just to talk shit about others.
Yeah, if you like if you have time to talk shit on 5 groups on Facebook and then on 5 other forums, it's like, focus on your work, focus on your shit, focus on getting more customers instead of focus on talking shit on internet about other people's stuff.
Why would you have to do that?
How come you have that much time?
Yeah, and what makes you a guy who can judge other person's work? Like not everyone's gonna be a great tattooer, and maybe that guy is like pushing his heart out, and maybe with your comment you fuck up something about his fucking cut.
And it's funny, like always on those forums there's a dude who's like, oh yeah, I want to become a bit faster, look, I did this Joker's portrait in 10 hours and it's like fucking like spotless perfect tattoo you will ever seen, and you're like, wow, you did this in 10 hours, and you're like, wow, and you asking for advice, and then someone's like, oh yeah, all these new tattoos suck, my tattoo shop's been here for 15 years, and you look at their work and you're like, okay, this is not that great.
Yeah,
they're like, I hate when customers ask these stupid questions. It's like, if you are a dick to customers, it's clear why you don't have customers, and it's clear why you are upset. Well, the next comment is this dude who's like, how can I improve my perfect tattoo? And you're like, yeah.
It's like this whining and judging others. I mean, I always respected when there is a judge, when there's someone telling something for reason,
It's called constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Like, there's, this is bad and this is why it's bad.
Yeah.
Not just like, oh, you're shit.
And not even like, you're shit because you don't work as many years as me, Or you're shit because you don't use proper machines. Or you're shit because you use this style of tattooing. It's like all this is bunch of shit talk. And then who said that which style is the best? Just because it's old school or traditional doesn't mean that's the only way you should do. And there's so many great tattooers doing realistic or photorealism, like color, whatever. And I think you can benefit from all of these styles. Doesn't matter which style you do. And instead of like talking shit, like it's weird.
Or that scratcher thing where it's like, this guy is scratcher, that guy is scratcher, and then like, who's scratcher? Because from what I understand, in States it's more like you don't work in a shop and you don't have license. Apart from States, there's many places that don't require license, and also they can be a tattooist who knows everything what needs to be done in the shop, but he just doesn't work in a particular shop. He's traveling, or he have like private studio, but he's legit, hygienic, clean tattooist. But I'm like, oh, he's scratcher. And lately I somehow figured out that vibe is like, scratcher is everyone who's not my idol, or it's not my friend. Because like, I can tell about anyone, like, oh, he's a scratcher. Oh, he doesn't have a license.
And also like, don't you guys remember about these scratchers? Maybe the guy just started tattooing, and don't you think like everyone's been a scratcher from beginning? I mean, you start somewhere, and if you can't get a job in a shop straight away, or you're looking for some special shop, it's like, this is the beginning of your journey, and if you really put your heart in it, you can be a fucking scratcher from beginning. Because I don't know any tattooer who's been good from the first tattoo they made. It's like, this is impossible.
And I think a scratcher scratcher at home with good background of information. He knows everything. Like he did all YouTube research, local legislation research, and he knows all that stuff. It's better, like if you are like brain capable to do that as a scratcher, then you got an apprenticeship in a shitty shop where it's some proper old timers who don't give a shit. They're like, we've been doing this for 30 years, like fuck using gloves, fuck using chemicals, just spray it with alcohol, you know. It's better to be informed scratcher than a shit apprentice in a shit shop.
Yeah,
I mean, like with this access of information,
every direction works. I mean, like no one
if it's a good direction.
Yeah, like no one sets like the rules how you should start right now. I mean, in any way, you should start somewhere, and if you think this is the start point for you and it's the best, you fucking do it. And that's how it is.
There's that thing in Oregon with those, like, to get a license, you have to go to the tattoo school where they most likely teach you some basics of hygiene, and then you have to go through, like, whatever, like, procedures of tattooing. As a scratcher, getting into that thing, it's still a better thing than a shit apprenticeship. Good apprenticeship will be always gold. Like, you know, if you're in a good shop, good artists, good experiences and all that, you're set for gold. If you fail in a good shop, it's your kind of problem, but like talking shit about those like tattoo schools, I think in some situations that might be better than a shitty apprenticeship in a shop where they're like fucking...
I'm always annoyed by this when guys with experience tell like you should get a proper apprenticeship. Like, how the fuck you know what's proper apprenticeship when you just start? Don't you remember when you just started, you didn't know nothing about it unless you have a friend who's doing it and gives you some orders. Like, how can you even know what's good? And those who like talk shit about these beginners, for example, it's like you guys, I guess you forgot how you became tattooers, you know, because everyone started in there. And sooner or later, some of them will become a good tattooist. Not everyone, and that's normal. Not everyone becomes a fucking good athlete just by fucking working out a lot, you know. It's just some gets there and some don't, and why would you judge that? Like, everyone was there from beginning.
From our country, it's like apprenticeship, like good apprenticeship is like last 3 to 5 years.
But what is a good apprenticeship?
Like the dudes you got like in your shop and all that, because before
that's like, okay. And if you can get in that shop as a... Because it's one from 2 million, one will get there.
Yeah, but before that, all I heard was dudes were like allowed to sit and observe from like 4 meters away what's going on. Now there's tattoo schools, and like you said, there's tattoo schools by dudes who own shops for a couple of years, and I know that there's also schools that they have artists with decent experience, and I also know that there's a tattoo school run by a dude who's just like, he's been also on these shows with like hidden cameras where he's like, oh yeah, we can tattoo minors, just fake your grandma's, like signature type of thing, and that type of a dude is running the school. Yeah, it's like decent apprenticeships I only heard is from the shop where you work, where people advertise, we're looking for apprentice, they find a guy and all that. And the rest of it is kind of like, my friend wanted to get into tattooing, I show him what's up, and it's more like this personal type of a thing, but like...
That's an opposite direction right now, because I was like talking, everyone been a scratcher from beginning, but then there's a other thing that not every scratcher is a fucking great minded tattooer who puts his heart in it. And these money-making scratchers who open their shop suddenly become like, oh, I think I'm good enough, and they start to teach other tattooers and give them bad lesson. That's like another direction which is like wrongly turned. But that's just because they didn't get a proper apprenticeship. And how do you get a proper apprenticeship if you can't get a proper apprenticeship? What do you do? And if you really want a tattoo and it's your only option, you cannot stop this. It's always gonna happen. It's been back in days when Sailor Jerry was fucking tattooing. There were also bad tattooers and good tattooers and scratchers and whatnot. Maybe not as much as now, not maybe, but for sure. There were bad and good, and just you have to accept it instead of talking shit, what's good, what's bad. let them fucking do and give their journey. And as long as there is no regulation, this shit's gonna go.
It also for me kind of links back to like,
Why would I?
I didn't go to the like military service, but one of the reasons I didn't go to, like I was terrified of it because I had to go. I cheated myself out of it, but there was a thing that was like, if you go into military, there's an older military who's in there and they would hate on you and they would make you like
The day's worst.
yeah, they would make your life just hell. And I watched some history kind of a channel and I explained it because there was a thing where like people should go in military and serve 3 years, and then 1 year it changed to 2 years, and the last bit who was serving 3 years, they were like, oh, you fuckers are getting it easy now. So they're like, we will fuck you up. They would make their lives hell because they have to serve 3 years and these new guys have 2 years. And they would fuck them up like big time. It's like Soviet shit. But then, cause them dudes were so fucked up from those 3-year guys, they would be like, we'll just fuck up those new guys. And it became a tradition within
It's
like
a wheel.
Soviet military. They're like, we were abused, so we will abuse you.
And that's the way, because how can you make a man if it's not going through the tears, you know, and hard times?
Yeah. So it seems like it's picked up in tattooing, and it's like,
It is, man. It is picked up from all the old school tattooer videos, all the fucking Sailor Jerry stories. Like this boom, it's like people created, like tattooers, like old-timer tattooers, everyone who has like old history created this boom like, oh, this is fucking, it should be this way, this is the only way. They forgot that there is so many countries on this world and everyone has a different fucking way of doing it. And we talked before that in Latvia 20 years ago, what the fuck?
yeah,
that was all
was
about.
like a fucking
Like,
prison shit.
I didn't even know there's such thing as apprenticeship. I didn't even know word as apprentice. Like, what the fuck is that? So it's like, to just judge everyone by your experience is already wrong. And who, like, I don't even know why I'm talking about this, because like, why would I care what they think? It's the same as when they care what the scratcher does, you know? All I care is like, don't fuck up someone's fucking body just because you want to fucking be greedy
Yeah,
and
but
make
like
money. You know?
in our country, like I said, apprenticeship is, as an apprenticeship as it's understood in the rest of the world, is for like last 5 years, because it was all just dudes were teaching dudes on a friendly basis and all that. Like the oldest, like a real old school tattooist, like he doesn't even fuck with that. He runs one of those tattoo schools. He's into like teaching stuff.
Yeah, well, fuck, like, cool.
Yeah, and it's like, I would even consider to learn from that guy. Like
Yeah.
I would consider to go and be like,
History
dude,
and whatever.
teach me. Yeah.
Everything. Like, I mean,
But like even their shop didn't have apprenticeship as it's understood in the modern world. So
because they didn't know about that shit, I think.
yeah, but it's like,
Why would you even like? I think a lot of tattooers don't even want to give apprenticeship.
yeah. Also, like if you are as a modern person and you read and you're like, oh, now I'll have to fucking torture some person. It's like,
Yeah, and also like what I've seen by learning myself and growing, I've seen so many tattooers going through the shop, like the beginners, scratchers. Not everyone has this heart into this thing. There's some people who are like, oh, I have a chance to steal money because like it's so open environment and I can easily steal money because money goes through me. I could fucking give less money to the shop and all these things. And it's like, you can see why maybe old-timers want to give a proper apprenticeship to just a certain people and maybe give them this hard time from beginning. So they want to see if you really, your heart is in the right place and you really mean it. You really want to become a good tattooer. I totally understand that.
I'll sound very basic, but
Tell me.
it's like I'm 100% sure that there's dudes who's getting into it just for the like rock star effect of it,
For
just
sure.
just to get like some ladies or boys or whatever they're into it. But it's like just this new trendy, like, oh, I'm a little bit a gangster, I'm a little bit artist, I'm a little bit alternative.
A little bit jacked.
I live my life, this is my art, and there's a lot of that aspect.
I mean, you can't, like I said, you cannot stop that. There will always be shitheads.
I mean, if it's your type of hustle, if the main reason there is just to get some
but
with JJ or men with JJ, go for
But
it.
listen, like old timer tattooers, they're like from what I see, their idea about this roughness is like we have to stop shitty tattooers become tattooers who would maybe steal money, don't respect the history or whatever. I, for example, do respect history. I would like change my style to realistic if I would want to, even with respecting a history. I don't have to follow these rules, but I respect the history. And these old timer dudes, they somehow want to control all the world, so there is only like guys who respect the history will become tattooers, and you cannot do that. And just bringing this like stories like you have to be like this and that, you don't even know what you're talking about if you talk about a guy from fucking Asia or whatever where he's from, because you don't know what the fuck he's doing there.
Shout out to that one person who commented it, but it was like awesome because in Europe, Philip Lou is like fucking
Hero,
like god
it's
of
like
tattooing. Like if you tell,
Hercules.
like, oh, you want dragon? Oh, Philip Lou. And then one person commented that like Philip Lou was so controversial back in the days that when he would go to tattoo convention in Asia, he would have bouncers like bodyguards with him because he was like so hated by rest of the world. He would be like just this punk of tattooing. People would be like, you fucking up our dragons type of a thing. And like I also heard on some like podcasts like on Books Closed or something, they're like, oh yeah, this Philip is doing some crazy shit. And I was like it's our classic, you know. I know people who would like book 5 years in advance and they're like, oh, he's like a Rembrandt of tattooing for me.
Yeah.
And then you hear that part of the planet and they're like, oh, he's
That's another fucking
guy.
Yeah, and it's so weird, man. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. Who knows? They probably do, or I don't care. For me, I still fucking love Philip Lou's work, and I respect him from all my heart what he did and his family. But like this is a proper picture for how different areas work different and mentalities change. And like if in Latvia.
Yeah,
In Latvia, someone does not even give a shaista about like Sailor Jerry, just because he has history written stories in America doesn't mean that people all around the world will respect that. But
yeah, like,
and it's like sad, but
my tattoo knowledge knows that it's like there was this old prison stuff, and then it all became like realistic looking. So that was like for people like
that's a true shit.
Yeah, it was like
back in days.
It was like, oh, we can make tattoos not prison looking by making them looking realistic. And people were like, oh, this is the shit. And then when old school came in, like traditional type of stuff, people were like,
what is this?
Apart from people who went to bands and like new kids and hardcore kids, everyone's like, this is like kids' drawings. It's like, what is this shit? Like,
weird shit?
We're trying to stay away from this stuff, and now it's becoming a trend. And
just recently.
And also tattooists are working hard on it, so they're like bringing it in, and it's like a thing. But like if you look historically, it went from like stars and almost traditional looking cats and elephants and knives and all that and stars.
Yeah.
It went to this realistic because we were like, we don't want that prison shit.
I mean, like the history in every country is a bit different, and especially with tattooing. It's like Denmark is like rich with old school tattooing with this sailor thing, and like fucking 1.5 hour flight to the right. No one knows about fucking Danish classy stuff, you know. It's so weird.
Yeah,
and
but also there was that history that like when they exchanged with like US and all that, it was like, oh yeah, hygiene, like we changed needles, and then US was like, oh, we changed tips as well, and they're like, oh, we didn't. And Mr. Carlos Zuccato, who's an awesome dude, he said he did some research, and the first shop in Brazil was opened by a Danish fucking sailor. He went to Brazil and he was like, fuck, I'm done with sailing, I want to do tattoos, and he like first official like kind of tattoo shop was done by a Danish dude.
Crazy. And again,
But they don't have that prison background. They
What?
don't have that negativity. They have that, like, you know,
yeah.
oh, my grandpa had a tattoo. Like,
Back
in my-
exotic thing, you know.
yeah, back in my country, if my grandpa had a tattoo, I was like, oh, we have a
Yeah.
history.
But like, what happened before? Like, what happened when Sailor Jerry was growing? You know, starting just learning and stuff. He didn't have any clue what the fuck is happening over the seas, and he traveled to fucking Japan or whatever, learned these new things, put new stuff in it. His mind changed, everything changed, and until this day, like a lot of tattooers, they travel from the shop to shop, they get new experience, they get new ideas, and I don't know anyone who is like stick with one thing.
The problem is that there's a new people who think they the shit, but they then read Sailor Jerry's shit, and they think like, I'm gonna be this guy.
Yeah,
You know,
like
that's the problem, because like everyone wants to learn, everyone wants to evolve.
But it's nothing bad about wanting to be like Sailor Jerry, because he accomplished a lot of cool shit, and actually he is a part of tattoo history. It's like a big name. Not everyone has to be Sailor Jerry. It's like
Yeah,
that's
and all that Russian realistic world couldn't care less about. Like,
yeah.
they're like,
So
look at my smooth shading.
So we started talking about old school versus new school mentality or whatever it is.
And I think that new school is so far off old school that you shouldn't compare those things.
They're
You should be
not
like,
close.
like there's a tattooing
Yeah.
and there's different branches and you can't compare them.
You
There's
cannot compare.
there's the middle line, and there's like, you do traditional, you dig your traditional shit.
It's
you
like,
know.
oh, look at that new tattooer who does only lines. There's not enough black. There's not enough shadings. Like,
Or
dude,
there's
like, this
only
is-
black.
yeah, it's like a different story, different shit. I mean, you can tell your opinion, what you think is good, what's bad, especially if you have a big experience. But to judge that guy like he's doing shit, he's not worth anything, just by your idea that he's not fitting in your frame.
busy, if his customers are happy, get out of there. Like, you know, not your cup of tea, maybe, okay, it can be better, but like, you know,
It can always be better.
yeah, that's another thing. It can always be better, but like, if it's not your cup of tea, it doesn't mean that it has to be your tea, you know?
Sometimes man, like we talk about these smart things, but sometimes I'm telling you, sometimes I even know some tattooers, like personally, I know them, and I look at the work they do, and I'm like, this is wrong, just not from the technical aspects, but from like historical, or from like there is
Common sense.
yeah, it's like this is wrong. If you do such an object where should be things around the object like that, just by mythology stories, whatever, I will, like, as a friend or as a guy I know, I could tell him my opinion, but that's